A lot of the NBA and NFL players are actually now gamers, and they're playing kind of in their spare time when they're not, practicing and working out for football and things like that. So I think there's challenges to, our traditional sports, particularly football, because of some of the health and safety issues. I think that's mutually exclusive from the opportunities that are being developed in esports. I would say one of the things that is really important for all of our states and all of our partners has been that we want to take the kids that are more STEM oriented or more focused on esports and things like that. But right now we're probably on the periphery of the school, being integrated into the school, and we want to make it a much more inclusive environment so they're attracted to stay after 3 o'clock and be a part of the club or the team and practice and socialize and work through all the issues that Andrew talked about. And if there's some overlap with some of the kids playing organized sports, awesome, right? Because those kids are also part of and are already included in the kind of the mainstream of the schools. So that's a great question.
Question?
To add to it about the decline, they don't really need a lot of time. Like with all this rain going on, you have your kids who are in there instead of being on the football field when it was raining out. They were on the computers or on their PlayStation playing games. So what it does is football, baseball, you need a lot more time to it. You can play a pickup game of whatever video game you're playing. The games sometimes only last 10, 15 minutes. So you can get 2 or 3 games in 30 minutes. Then you're off, you'll eat dinner, you'll do your homework. I think the time commitment can be a lot lower on some of these kids where they still can play and enjoy it, but not necessarily have these big long times. So when you're talking about the time, I don't think you can do a lot or a little. Kids can jump in whenever they need.
Kind of adding on to that, but taking a slightly different path, what about the concern regarding addiction in video games? I mean, this has been a big thing lately, especially with Fortnite being as popular as it is. How do you keep kids from falling into an addiction? Because unlike sports, I mean, being addicted to sports can happen as well, but at least you're exercising, If you're addicted to video games, you're sitting in a chair for 18 hours a day. I play video games all the time too, but I maintain a good health balance, kind of. I try to maintain a life game balance where I'm not spending my whole weekend doing it. I want to get out of the house and stuff. How do we teach those things to our kids as we're also encouraging them to play and practice in their time?
So the question was about addiction in video games and how are we making sure that we're not fostering further addiction, essentially. And the answer to that is that kind of what you were talking about already. There's a lot of kids who are going home after school and they're playing 8 hours of video games, and maybe they're not doing their homework, maybe they're not doing any of their clubs in school because that's the only thing that they're really attracted to. The whole goal that we want to achieve here is we want to take that set of kids and say, okay, you're already playing video games. Why don't we bring you back into the classroom? You can play together. You can learn about teamwork, things that you're probably not learning at home. You can learn about communicating with other people and be live with the people next to you while you're playing your games. So the way that we're approaching that problem isn't to say, hey, we want to keep you off video games. If video games is the only thing that you are really attracted to as a child and that's where you come out personally, we don't want to say, hey, you can't play video games. We want to say, okay, why don't we provide an environment where you can go play those video games and learn in the school environment and be educated at the same time. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Well, and it's also about being supervised. So instead of being in the basement for 8 hours, you're in an organized situation in a classroom with supervision, with instruction and guidance on things like nutrition and being healthy and not overdoing it. So getting the kids in a classroom in an organized environment and having that oversight, that's really the whole goal. Whereas they're not getting that if they're in the basement for 8 hours by themselves, right?
Okay. Oh, question.
Probably related to some of the other ones. As far as like the structure, a lot of athletic directors have alluded to losing participation. Well, if you have a structure at a school site and practices after school, which was alluded to is back on campus, and that's the same time as sport, so then it's a conversation between club e-sport coach and high school coach. Well, if you're not here making our practices, then you're not going to be playing, vice versa. So then the student will ultimately have to choose. And if it isn't on school campus, then there's a concerns as far as what type of cyberbullying protection is out there. What do we have? What communication tools are in esports so we can monitor what kids are stating?
So your first question, Can you repeat the very first question? Sorry.
Yeah, the first question is that if we have a esports coach on campus, we're practicing 3 to 5 after school, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And I might play boys basketball. We practice Monday through Friday from 3 to 5. Okay, well, you're gonna have to choose because I have all these other dedicated esports students coming to my practice time during after school practice hours. And also that kid has a conflict with another sport, maybe basketball. And it also extends to what are the tournaments, what are the competitions that
Sure.
that conflict with that. And then the second part of that, what part of cyberbullying protections is there communication avenues, because that goes directly on site-based administration regarding discipline and what's said through those channels.
Yeah, so we're leaving it up to the school to make a lot of those decisions about scheduling and things like that. But again, the big concept here is that this is going to be a no-cut activity. So if you're a school and you've got 20 people who are interested and 5 of them are in traditional sports and they're practicing every day after school, you get to create a team that still plays in the league of maybe I don't want to say the lower level players, but the players that don't have enough time to commit to the full practice structure, and they'll still be allowed to play. And then the students that are going to come in and they're going to be really steadfast in their practice and they're really working towards it, and this is a really powerful thing for them, they might be kind of the higher level competing teams. So we're going to let everyone compete, but at the end of the day, that's up to the coach, the decisions that they're going to be able to make with it. For example, practice time isn't something that we mandate. It's something that we suggest, and that scheduling is up to the coaches. To answer your second question, with cyberbullying and things like that, one of the things that is required of a coach is that they actually have time to be there and be in the room and be a part of those practices. And by the way, we know, and we'll go into this, we know that the coaches don't typically know about the games. They're not able to give strategic advice. They're not able to say what characters you need to be playing or things like that. But they're the ones that are going to be there, and they're scheduling the practice, and they're doing the organization, and they're helping lead these kids and teach them how to deal with issues with each other. So part of that is that the coach needs to be there. They'll be overseeing the language and things like that being used. At the end of the day, beyond that, we're really trying to avoid being big brother on a lot of these things. We don't want every interaction that happens online to be recorded and gone through later. Kind of like how on the soccer field, if someone throws an elbow, sometimes that's just a little bit of part of the competition. So we're there to make sure that the sexism and racism and anything, the homophobic content language is never used, and we're going to deal with those things. But beyond that, that's really up to the coach on how they want to handle the rest of that.
Esports, they're going to be a student participation eligibility criteria as far as what certifications they need to do. Like, for example, in sport, it might be brain book, it might be et cetera. Coach might have to do fundamentals of coaching. There's going to be a bully, harassment, appropriate behaviors course mandated. So everybody's on the same level, which might further move into the outside of school competition.
Yep.
Yeah, we'll adhere to all the AIA guidelines, and that's why we partner, and actually the agreement is with AIA. So whatever guidelines or requirements the AIA have, we will support and make part of the eligibility or practice time requirements, things along those lines. To go back to your... Well, it is with AIA, right? They have the guidelines that they use for all participation in these types of activities.
Activity or sport, there's different.
Yeah.
Yep.
So to answer your other question, one of the nice things about esports or e-gaming or e-preps, whatever we want to call it, is we have the opportunity to play multiple seasons during the year. We're kicking off with the spring, early February to the beginning of May or end of April, but we'll have the opportunity to do 2 or 3 seasons per year, depending upon how aggressive you guys want to be and how much opportunity and participation and interest there is. So we could do and plan on most of the states to do a fall sport season, a spring sport season, and potentially even a summer sport to keep kids integrated in with the academic environment and the educational environment. So some kids who maybe are playing basketball who couldn't participate or wouldn't want to, right? It's too much of a distraction. will still have the opportunity to come back and play in other times during the year. So there's a lot of flexibility around that from a participation perspective.
So Brian, will the seasons then run the same as our athletic seasons? Like, will we do basically the same?
I believe the season for the spring again is going to be February through March with a state tournament in April. When we go to the fall season, we're looking October through December, I believe it is.
But we can adjust those too.
I just think that solves the issue of.
There's no
Football and wants
Yep.
to do esport. I know maybe
Yeah.
spring practice and that, but gives a kid an opportunity to do that out of season that wants to be part of it, that they can do.
Question.
Do you need to have a coach?
What's that?
Do you have to have a coach? What's the role of a coach? Why?
Yeah, so we're going to get.
Or what?
We're going to get to the coaching, and we've got some guidelines set. The answer is yes. You do need an administrator, and if you wanted to call it an administrator or coach, whatever you want to call it, there does need to be someone there. But beyond that, part of the way that we handle the actual strategic and in the sort of game-specific leadership is that there's captains that are elected, and the captains actually take over a lot of that leadership. Whatever needs to happen on a game-by-game or day-by-day basis. But yeah, we do require that there's at least someone who is an administrator at the school to administrate over the esports team.
So you said that you need them to be there. Is there the competition? Is that practice? Is that the organization? What does there mean? I mean,
So we need them to be available, and this is very different on a state-by-state basis. For example, New Mexico said that everything that happens in esports has to happen within the school, no matter what. Arizona might decide, and this is still up for conversation, but Arizona might say that, hey, on a weekly basis, practices can take place at home. So you can go in, and you can do your practices on your home computers and play that way. So at the end of the day, we need the coach to be available, whether it's a call or an issue that happens or et cetera. The coach needs to be able to just be available in terms of their time. But of course, what we'd like is that the kids are practicing in the school and that the coach is present during the practices. And the coach can be a teacher. They can be grading their assignments if that's what they need to do, but we would like them to be available and present.
so is there a ratio of gamers? I don't know.
Of course.
I mean, if we have an athletic team, we're going to have so many coaches for so many kids. Is this, are you have one coach per limited, or do you expect it to be, every 25 kids, just throw out a number?
I'll answer that. Okay, so here's the deal. It's like your speech and debate team. Like your speech and debate team, this is an activity. That is a school decision. We don't have a rationale of how many kids you have in speech and debate per coach. If you have a coach, if that's a paid coach, that's a school option. But this is an activity like speech, chess, JROTC, all those are competitions that are run through the AIA. This is the same thing as an activity that will be treated as an activity.
I have a question, David. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you when you were back there if you answered it. Do these coaches have to do fundamentals of coaching?
They do not. This is an activity. Whatever, as we move forward this, we'll actually have a policy and procedure that we'll put into place. This is not like Spirit Line, that they have to have brain book and et cetera. This is an activity where we're trying to get more and more kids involved.
So is it treated like sports where if we don't offer it at our school, our kids can participate with another school team?
It is an activity, Randy. That is not the case in activities.
Okay.
This is not a sport.
So I'm not sure what that means. So could a kid, if they're not if they don't offer it at that school, can they compete in that school?
Again, we have rules that are our rules.
The rule, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the rule for the AIA is that we have an activity or a sport. If it's not offered, that student can transfer to another school. They cannot go play for another school while attending School A. That is our current rule. That would stay in effect.
Question?
I wonder, it's not so much a question as it is a comment. I mean, I played chess in high school, and I'm seeing a lot of parallels here when we're talking about coaching, how the practices will be ran, what the expectations are in terms of practice, perhaps outside of school. I mean, playing chess growing up in high school, like up in high school, we had, practice twice a week for a certain amount of time. We had our competitions on the weekends, and it was usually expected that we did some practice at home, whether that was self-studying by reading a book or playing online. These were all things that are a lot of parallels to what we've been discussing so far. I mean, it doesn't seem that much different, quite frankly, to me.
Yeah, and that's part of why we want to lean on the team captains. Back to your question about how many coaches should you have per the amount of students that you have. Again, that's completely up to you. You only need one, and we want to lean on those team captains to go and play the role of the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator and the conditioning coach, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's who we lean on for that. So it's really open up to your decision. But from a game-to-game basis, we want to really lean on those captains to emerge as leaders in the program. If that makes sense. Okay, so we're going to move on a little bit. We went through a little bit of a background of esports, and just to give you guys an idea of what esports in general looks like, this is what some of the live events look like for esports. This one's the NALCS championships a couple years ago or last year. And they fill up a basketball stadium with this. And you can see the Jumbotron right there is showing the game. And then the actual gamers are on the stage below it, in computers arranged versus each other. And it's a great environment. I've been to these events, and it's really positive. It's really the same kind of energy if you were going to go to a basketball game. So, how many of you have been to an event like this, any kind of esports events? Yeah. Any stories to tell, any thoughts on how you enjoyed it, or? It is a real fun time, yeah.
Can I ask a question? Maybe we should have covered it at the beginning. How many of you are involved in clubs at your existing schools today? How many of you are sponsoring or coaching those clubs? Great. And I think as some additional questions and conversation happens, I think you guys could also shed some light on some of the things that are going on today within those clubs, because I think we'll all learn a lot from some of you guys that have been, sponsoring these or coaching these kids or involved in them, and because you have probably as much real world experience as any of us. So,
and I'm gonna pick on you guys. How many people are in? First question: what high school are you from?
Prescott High School.
Prescott. Yep. And how many people are in your club for esports?
About 12 to 13 right now.
12 to 13.
We just started last school semester. We started as a club in hopes to become, a sport at the school. We were originally going to go through a third-party program, and then AIA picked it up this year. So we're going to be doing the next season. But on our team, we have varsity football players. We all went to Prescott High School. We now all work within the district, and we all played varsity high school. Sports and stuff. Played multiple sports, but we enjoy video games. I mean. The way I kind of see it is like my dad, for instance, he loves to watch TV, loves to watch baseball. I don't really like baseball. It's just my thing. So I like to play video games. And so that's what I do instead. So that's my free time. But then as sports, and kind of like in regards to coaching, so there's 3 of us, and in League of Legends, just the game they've been showing, there's 5 different positions, and we each play different positions. So like, the bottom lane has their own role, their own play style. I know nothing about that. But my friend here, that's what he coaches. He's great at that. That's what he's been playing for years since the game originally even came out. So he has a lot of info on that, while I play on the opposite side of the map, where I play like in the jungle, which has its own utility, own champions. So there's 150 different champions or so. And then for those two, you have to understand how they play, their abilities, their passives, how everything works, how they play together against each other. Just like in football, they're going to run this play, you're going to run this defense. So if I know they're going to have a composition that heavy's one thing, I'm going to try to counter that and go a different thing. So that's kind of where the coaching comes in. And then, people were asking about the cyberbullying and stuff. We use a third-party thing called Discord. It's a voice channel.
Which we also use.
Yes.
Okay, and so in that we have roles. So all of our players are under players, and they have strict guidelines that they have to follow and they can do. They know that if, they break a rule, then, they get in trouble. There's consequences, we're with the school. And then, we can give them, like, our captain, he has a different role, he can do more things, things like that. So there's a lot of different opportunities, and like in chat, you can type in chat in the game, and you can mute everyone to deal with bullying. A lot of different options, and so it's become kind of nice. But the players do have a really good grasp on, what they're supposed to be doing.
I wanted to say something about that, about coaching too. There are people out there that are just as interested in the games as the kids that are adults, so it doesn't necessarily, at least for us, we're all super into it and know a lot about it, so we're actually able to coach the kids and stuff like that. So I think it doesn't necessarily have to be where you have, a team captain that sort of runs practice and then just have an adult like for supervision. There can be like people out there, especially if you do like, put up some sort of application or something like that, that people can come and apply for coaching positions to coach teams like that, because there are a lot of people out there that are super into it.
That are interested. No, and I completely agree with that. And at the end of the day, it's going to be what works for the school. If you got folks like yourselves who really know about the games, you're really passionate, and you want to help these kids kind of through the same path you were in, that's amazing. That's the exact kind of thing we're looking for. We just don't, we don't want to say that that's a requirement, because, just as well, someone who's a coach who doesn't know about the game can help develop the leadership of any of the students who are, seniors or even juniors who know a lot and play a lot, and they can pass all that information and help on to the rest of their students. So thank you, guys. So, sorry.
What games are you guys playing? Everybody playing League?
Yeah, well, we're primarily League of Legends. Yeah, there's some kids, I know lots of kids that are interested in multiple different esports, but we all mainly play League of Legends, so that's what we're
Because right now, it's clear, it is just Rocket League and League of Legends, right?
No, we are wide.
Okay, we originally just told about League of Legends and Rocket League, but like, for instance, I play a lot of Rainbow Six Siege, which is another competitive game that's kind of rising. And my key plays a lot like Fortnite, but we're also not sure, in the school setting, how people are going to respond to the shoot 'em up games. Because to us, we don't think about it, right? We're like, we've always been playing this. I've been playing these games forever. But then you hear, especially Prescott, which is a lot of retirees, a lot of people who, they hear that and they're like, well, this is ridiculous. We've had people say some pretty hurtful things, quite frankly, over a video game. And I'm like, that seems a little strange. So we weren't sure what you guys had on that.
Part of the things we're learning from, as we're doing the surveys and doing these, getting feedback, is what games are appropriate for the state of Arizona, which are different than California, for example, or New Mexico, or Michigan, or some other places. So that's one of the things we want to understand, what kids are playing and what they're participating in. We will always be in line with the the decisions and the perspectives of the state and the AIA, right, with the games. We'll play teen appropriate games. We probably won't go with the mature games, especially in the early stages, until we get a better feel for it. So we'll stay with the teen rated games. Overwatch, we're having conversations with. We're dealing with a lot of the publishers right now, and we have 4 or 5 states that we'll be managing. So we have a lot of leverage with the publishers today, and we're working with a couple of very top esports management companies with facilities and the ability to do really cool LAN events and things like that, with some semi-tractor trailers that we roll in, and so there's lots of cool stuff going on that kind of in the works. But we're very open. I think initially we were focused on League of Legends and Rocket League, but there's been so much breadth of interest from the kids in the schools that we've really taken a step back, and we want to look at, okay, what are the most appropriate games to play? Where are we going to get the most relevant participation and be able to create the best experience for the state and for the schools and for the kids? So we're actually wide open, and we have a lot of different options, and that's one of the reasons why I think when we talked to Brian and David and these guys originally, we were going to try and get it started during the fall. But there's just so much work to do and so much things that we needed to understand. We pushed it off to the second semester so we could make sure we had a very positive experience for everybody.
And to give you a quick anecdote about the games, one of the schools that we talked to in New Mexico when we did kind of a similar educational seminar, they've got a gaming club right now that they've got 50 or 55 people involved, kids that are involved. And one of the guy who runs the whole thing came up to me. He says, just so you know, we've got 5 kids that play League of Legends. It's like, 3 or 4 that play Rocket League, and we've got 40 that play Overwatch. I mean, it was unbelievable, and I would never have guessed that personally. Of course, I've played all those games, but I would have never guessed that would be the skew of the statistics. But it just goes to show is that the interest is very different across all the schools, and that was one of the big things that we learned pretty quickly. So moving forward, one of the big things that we've been trying to push with the educational side is the academic benefits of esports. One of the big statistics you see is that there's a huge correlation between students that are playing video games and esports and those who are interested in the STEM field and want to go to college and study engineering or anything of the sort. And one of the big things that we want to do is bring a lot of the kids who, again, maybe there are the group of kids that are playing the sports as well as esports and video games, but we want to also reach out to the kids who maybe they're not interested in participating in clubs at school, and maybe they're not already playing sports, and maybe the schools are having trouble keeping those kids after school doing activities, and we want to reach out to those kids and say, hey, this is a great environment for you. Why don't you come in and open up and be a part of this? So, we want to bring it back to the educational side, and that's sort of the way that we've been positioning this whole thing for everybody. So again, and we've sort of talked about the professional esports, the people who are making $1 million a year to play video games, 12, 14 hours a day. The collegiate side, there's 70 plus colleges that are offering some kind of scholarship for esports. I think, most people just saw that Ohio State is building their esports arena. All the colleges are going all in on this, and part of that is they want to attract the STEM fields. So the kids that are playing esports that are really interested in math and science and engineering, they want those kids to come to their school and to help grow their programs, et cetera. So, tons of opportunities for collegiate, but again, now that we've seen the professional, we've seen the college, it's kind of time to turn to the high school and say, how can we foster the same kind of educational environment for the high schools?
I'll give you a good real-world example. I taught at the University of San Francisco in their their collegiate sports management program, and I've advised from the president on down through the athletic department on their digital media for sports and positioning for their sports teams and athletic departments and things like that. So I'm not sure exactly the timing, but I talked to the president in the spring, and they're going to do an esports club, start an esports club where they're going to fund it, and it's going to be scholarshiped and things like that. They also reinvested a significant amount of capital and resources into their IT department, their engineering school, and things like that. And then they have one of the top 10 collegiate sports management programs in the country in the graduate school, and they're creating a major in esports in their collegiate sports management program. So that's kind of real world examples. Andrew mentioned Ohio State Akron just put in an entire lab for esports. So one of the partners that we're talking to right now has the rights to over 200 collegiate esports schools that are doing esports competitions. So that just starts to fuel this conversation about it, that it's kind of arrived, but it's also something that if we want to be preparing our kids for the future, right, and for future opportunities and giving them the best opportunities we possibly can, that this is something that if we create the right environment and the right competition and make it meaningful and relevant and inclusive, it can really, I think, add a tremendous amount to the high school experience as we're preparing kids for the future.
Well, and then as we talk about the ecosystem of everything around this, it's not just esports. Something to ease the mind of people who are considering going out and spending money on an esports lab or putting in a new computer lab, et cetera, is that when you go in and you put in that high-powered technology, you've just opened yourself up to a lot more things than esports. Classes in graphic design and programming and high-powered computing. The list goes on and on and on what you can do with that kind of thing, that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of schools, for example, one of the ones that we talked to, they put together an esports lab, and one of the things that they've been pushing through that during their school days is a game development program. That's one of the biggest things, is that there's a lot of students who, again, they're playing games at home. They're really interested in programming and the art and how do you make games. You can open yourself to a game development program, which I can personally attest to be very fun. So that's just a small look at the opportunities that open up. But again, sorry, question.
Is college governed by the NCAA?
No.
Good question. No, it's kind of the wild, wild west right now, but that's being.
Type thing, like you have BYU's rugby team will play in a club.
Yes, in a lot of, and it can sit in the athletic department, it can sit in the university student services department, so each one's kind of unique right now, but there's an ongoing push to organize it at the collegiate level, and you have 3 or 4. The NCAA is staying out of it for today, but it's left a vacuum, and there's a lot of folks doing a variety of things, including Legacy, to become part of that ecosystem in the collegiate space as well.
Did mention that colleges are offering full ride scholarships.
Full ride, partials, similar to a lot of things, right? But they see it not only a great student participation to attract students and things like that, but really in the student services side of things, as I mentioned with San Francisco, it fits so nicely into a number of different layers throughout the university, from STEM to their engineering departments, to their graduate studies, to corporate recruitment, right? That's one of the reasons why universities are spending so much in the STEM recruitment of STEM-oriented students, because they're getting grants and they're getting a lot of interest from corporations who need STEM-oriented types of students, for career path opportunities.
And we've sort of highlighted what a lot of those look like up here. Again, if you're participating in esports, it's not just about going pro or going to college for it. There's a whole list of things around esports, like the entire production crew. So if you go to these live events and you saw the one that we showed earlier, there's an enormous, audio visual crew, shoutcasting, production, whatever it is, that sits behind and makes the event. So the event management side of thing, and the programming, and again, game development, and the list goes on and on of the opportunities that are opened up for students that participate in esports and gaming, etc. So we're going to move forward, and we're going to talk a little bit about the implementation of all of this. How is this going to work in Arizona? And again, these are all parameters of what we want to do. You might come back and say, hey, instead of 8-team conferences, we want 6-team conferences, or we want 10-team conferences. So it's really open. This is kind of our suggested method of implementation, and then we're going to move forward with it. And this would be a perfect time to ask questions, and as we move forward with all this. So one of the first things that we talk about is registration. We work with our own implementation of the Fuse Sport platform, and that platform does everything from registration to competition management and bracketing and scores and results. And then we're going to sort of go through the technical side of that later, just really shortly, on how that's going to work with the AIA. But it's a really robust platform. It really does all the needs for sports and esports and competition. So first thing we're going to do is, on our website, we're going to be releasing all of the registration information. I think in November is when all that information comes out, videos on how to register, etc. And then part of the administrative need of having a coach is that the coach is the one that actually registers the team. So as you register, there's a fee of $50 per student that's registered on the platform. Again, a student can be part of multiple teams. So it's just per student that's on the platform and is competing. And part of that is you go.
The school, right?
Yes,
Or the
correct.
club,
Right. So once all of the students are registered, that fee is paid by the school or the club. And we've got lots of ideas of how that could be funded by the school, et cetera, through fundraisers or grants, et cetera. Just like many other activities. So we're going to open up some of that information, suggestions, et cetera. Again, the school coaches register the team on the platform. That's when we begin communication back and forth through emails and webinars, et cetera, on a bi-weekly basis to help guide the coaches on what they need to do before the start of the season. And then again, once everything's available and everyone's registered, that's when we release all the schedules and the results and all other information on our platform. Question?
$50 a season
Yes. Yes, per season. Question?
What do I get for my $50? Just access to play?
Yeah, access to play, and again, we do all the registration and the over management of all of it, and open up all the scheduling and the bracketing and the registration and all of our support team. So we work directly with, each state is going to have a dedicated Discord server for the communication and help and support and some of the scrimmaging and anything that's revolved in esports. So we have dedicated people in each of those to help guide people through what they need to do, et cetera.
We'll also provide at the early stages right now. A lot of you maybe don't know if your computer labs or if you have the infrastructure, the computers that can actually compete at the level that we're going to require. So we'll come in and help assess your computer labs and your infrastructure to make sure that you have the capabilities to be competitive and to compete, and maybe give you recommendations on things that you need to do to make it a competitive level.
And then we're going to be providing documentation for, you guys can look through after for essentially all of the things that are covered. Oh, also the state tournament goes into that as well. All of the things that are covered under that $50 and why it's worth it, essentially. Question?
Since you guys are going to be the go-to people, are you going to work, because League of Legends, I'm just using Rocket League and League of Legends because the original press release said that. Rocket League's a free to play. League of Legends is free. Rocket League is a pay per unit. Are you going to be working with the vendors then to worry about the prices of that, or are we just on our own for that stuff?
Yeah, so we had a long conversation. Actually, we talked for quite a bit at the NMAA about that same question. What I think we came to the agreement for is that we are going to be providing those copies if we can't come to an agreement about the actual money for each copy. We're going to be making sure that kids can participate for only that $50, no matter what. Question?
So, in terms of the competitions and the state competition and whatnot, are the computers the students will be playing on provided by you as well, or would the schools be responsible for bringing their own computer equipment?
Are you saying for the actual live events?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. The way that we plan on doing our live events, and we'll get to a little more information on that later, we're going to be doing a live tournament where the top teams from each conference are invited to play in the actual playoff, and those will be on provided computers. But part of the way that we're going to be doing the entire event is to surround that with a LAN party. And to give you an idea of what a LAN party is, I've attended DreamHack for the last few years, and that's one of the biggest gaming conventions. They've got this thing called the BYOC, Bring Your Own Computer LAN event. And a LAN event is just where people all come and sit at tables next to each other and hook in their computers, and you play video games with the people around you. It's a really great environment. It's a lot of fun, lots of camaraderie. So that's what we're going to be doing for the live event. So even if you don't get to participate in the playoff, every student is invited to bring their computers and set up around the event and play in this big open LAN party.
So, going back to my original question though, so the devices will be provided for the state playoffs, but the competitions before the playoffs leading up to them, those devices are provided by us, the schools then?
Correct. Yes, the competitions that happen during the league of whether it's in the school or, again, I don't know what the decision is, but if the AIA chooses to allow your state games to be played with students at home, that's all provided either by the school or by the students who can use their personal devices, et cetera.
So we go onto this website,
Mhm.
we register our students there.
Yep.
It's $50 per student, then how do we pay for that?
Yeah, so it's going to be all through the system once registration's set. And I think the way that we're having it done is that you cannot participate in the actual games until you've played. So
You send us an invoice and we send you a purchase order, or do we pay online with the?
correct, paid online. Yep, yes, paid online, all in bulk though, so you don't have to actually go in and.
I would say some, and we'll work with you, because I know some districts, right, and some
Prefer to
school
be,
systems
yeah.
require an invoice and things like that. So that's one of the things we're working through right now. If you can pay online with a credit card, awesome. If you need an invoice, and then that can be transferred digitally through a credit card once the invoice is processed, we'll work through that on an individual basis with each school.
So, and again, questions like that are the perfect questions for this, because we want to know what you have issues with and what isn't going to work for you. So continue to bring things like that up. And we can change the process for whatever works for you, essentially.
We may get to this later, but for the games themselves,
Mhm.
would the kids be using their own accounts, or like a school account if the games are provided for us? Is it like
So the question is, in the games themselves, will students be using their own accounts or will they be using school-provided accounts? They'll be using their own accounts. That's a requirement because part of tracking cheating and maybe bad language, or if students have been banned from playing the actual game, et cetera, that's tracked on a per account basis, and that's information that we need to have and use.
I have some students who've been playing since they were small, and their personal accounts are not necessarily appropriate for school.
As in the names of them aren't?
Yeah. Is that, do they need to then change their personal?
Yes.
account?
Yep. Yeah, and part of what we do is if it's anything lewd or homophobic or sexist or anything related to all of that, we would ask that they change their account. So it's something that's relatively acceptable within the school environment.
Something they thought was funny when they were 11, now that they're 16, they realize it's not actually.
It's not as funny as they thought it was. Yeah.
I know that Riot charges them, like it's like $10 to change your name. Is that something that they're gonna have to pay?
So they're welcome to do that for any games that if they charge to change name or anything like that, they're welcome to do that. They're welcome to start a new account. One of the biggest things though is that a lot of these games will be streamed and shoutcasted and whatever, and we can't have a student that has like a lewd name or something that you wouldn't want to say on a live stream pretty much.
But they need to pay for it themselves to change their name.
And again, they can do that. They can make a new account, et cetera, if that's the account they want to play on. But yeah, so that would be a requirement for us.
For a typical computer lab, what would be estimated costs to get it up to speed to be able to play the games that they're going to be competing in?
So that is a really open, broad question. Part of that comes into how many computers do you want to buy? Or if you're retrofitting your existing computers, how many components do you want to buy? How many of them do you want to retrofit? I can say that anything that's kind of gaming spec for a machine can be anywhere from $600 to $2,000. So per device, per machine, per device. I mean, that's for a brand new machine that you're going to put in. Again, the question, it ends up, how much do you want to put into these? Do you want to make a beautiful state-of-the-art gaming machine, or do you want to go in and put a lab that just meets the recommended minimum specifications?
And compete at a high level, right?
Right.
And so if you want to put your kids, if I'm a coach,
Mhm.
I want to give them the best opportunity to win with a standard computer in a computer lab at school. What's an estimated cost to get that computer where it needs to be successful?
Yeah, so part of that, and again, we're working with some external vendors that we're going to be partnering with to help provide cheaper machines. If you were just going to go out and buy something by yourself, I would put it at $600 to $800, and then the price goes up as you want to put all the bells and whistles on it.
One of the things, though, remember, as you're putting together these labs or these purchase orders and things like that, these are not just specific to gaming, right? These can be used throughout the entire academic curriculum, right? So whether it's biology or it's IT or it's business, whatever it might be. So they can be used certainly for gaming, and you need certain specifications with the computers and the Wi-Fi or the network infrastructure, right? Because you want to have throughput and availability. But they can be used in replicable ways throughout the entire academic environment.
I design and build a lot of computers for myself and for friends and others for gaming purposes, and I know firsthand that depending on how much money you put in the machine, and not just the computer itself, but the monitor, your keyboard, your mouse, your headset, every little thing can make quite a big difference. So when schools are bringing their computers to the competitions and the lower end competitions, how do we maintain fairness then? Because one setup could give quite the edge compared to another setup. And that's kind of like deflating a football in the playoffs.
No, that's a good question. So we're going to be.
But I mean, I know firsthand this makes a difference. I mean, one winter I went, I spent an extra $600, upgraded my machine with some parts and new peripherals, and my gameplay improved pretty much overnight.
Yeah.
This gives you an edge over other players who may have the same skill, but perhaps not the same components.
Well, you can't legislate equality, right? What you can do is you can set standards that are required, and then it's up to the school and the kids to, if they want to compete at a certain level, they're going to invest more. It's like football. A lot of us played football or basketball. You play on the same field, but you don't necessarily have the same equipment, right? You don't have the same shoes, you don't have the same shoulder pads, you don't have the same helmets and things like that. So that can give everybody a little bit of an advantage. And I've been in the athletic world for a long time, and people invest certain levels depending upon their budget and what they want to ultimately accomplish. And remember, we're getting started, right? We want to set the parameters to create a really meaningful and enjoyable competition for as many people as we possibly can. We want to be very inclusive in that regard. We'll learn a lot, right? The AIA will learn a lot, we'll learn a lot, you guys will learn a lot, and this will evolve year over year, and over the next 3 to 5 years, I think this is going to be something that's really wonderful for all of us. But in the initial stages, we're just trying to do the best job we can to create as good of an environment and experience for as many people as we possibly can.
And to further your analogy, what we're here to say is that if you're going to step on the football field, you need cleats, you need shoulder pads, you need pads, but we're not saying you need the newest $300 Nike, whatever they're called. You know, so hopefully that's an apt analogy for to answer
Well,
your
and
question.
remember, we're organizing the leagues by player rating. So if you got a bunch of souped up machines, those folks are probably going to be playing at a higher level, so they'll be matched up against their equals. So that's the other way we level the playing field.
Two questions. First, is it only going to be PC-based, or are they looking at console? Because the lifetime of a console is going to outweigh the lifetime of a PC just by the time the hardware goes obsolete. Next, what are we going to have a list of games? Because we're talking about all these requirements. A game like League, the requirements on the computer are far less than almost every first-person shooter out there. So
Right.
when are we going to have a list of the games so we can start even looking into
So right now we're doing PC only for the online season competitions as we move to our LAN events. And right now we're talking about state tournaments, but we're having some more internal conversations about having kind of events over the course of the year that's not just the state tournament, maybe inviting the neighboring school districts, et cetera. So we're going to be opening up console and local play games for that. But yeah, for the online league competitions, those are going to be all PC based. And then can you remind me of what your second question was?
when are we going to get a list of games so we can start looking into PC requirements?
Yeah, so we're going to be releasing the list of games in the middle of November.
So, when competition comes, are we looking at a school playing a school, or is it 5 schools play at one time? What's that setup look like? And also, how many people compete for that school? Do you have one team, or if this is as big as you guys are claiming it to be, and it probably is, does a school have 5 teams or 10 teams, or is it just their best X amount of players being able to play?
That's a great question, and we're going to get to that. But the short answer of that is the school can have as many or as few teams as they'd like, as that they would like. So if a school would like to have 5, 10 teams, and they've got sorry, I keep doing that, and they've got the students that are interested and want to play competitively, they're welcome to have as many teams as we want. Part of the challenge for the bracketing, we just want to make sure for conferences that we don't have 2 teams from the same schools playing against each other. We don't think that would be great to foster the really competitive nature of some of these games, especially if they're playing in the same room as each other. But that's one of the problems that we'll have to solve. But yeah, the idea is that's up to the school, and that's a decision that you guys get to make.
This is a little bit more in the game kind of question, but you said that we have to use all their own accounts, right?
Yep.
In order to, is that going to be like in the actual competitions themselves too? They'll be using their accounts.
Yes.
So problems that arise there is like, say for something like champion select, like I want to first pick a champion because I got the first pick.
Right.
But that kid's account doesn't have that specific champion unlocked, or they haven't just unlocked every single champion. That takes a lot of time to do. And so what would be like the answer to that kind of thing? Since like this is a super big power pick, I need this in order, for the match.
Right.
And that kid's account doesn't necessarily have that champion unlocked yet for that kind of situation.
Yeah, so this is a really common thing that you'll see at a lot of the LAN tournaments and events is when you don't have, certain characters unlocked, and this is common across a lot of especially the MOBA genre. is that you don't have every character unlocked. What you do is you designate a couple champions at the very beginning of the game that are temporary picks, and they would represent another pick, and then you can go through, you can make the trade, and then you remake the game, and then you pick the correct ones in order, and it has to follow the exact same draft. So that's a pretty common way. We're going to be releasing a whole rule book of what's allowed and what isn't allowed, and that's going to be coming in December, so that'll answer all those questions. But yeah, we do have an answer to that.
And you're the only person who knows what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I currently run an esports club, and what our current barrier to entry is the financials. Like, so I feel like $50 per student when I had like 150 kids that wanted to play. I don't know if my admin's going to want to pay like $6,000-$7,000 every couple of months to let the kids play. Is there any chance there's going to be like a bulk discount for clubs that are larger than others?
Well, and again, with the clubs, you can have a club that's separate from this. This is the competitive, I play for the varsity team, so to speak, and we play in this league, et cetera. So not every member that's in the club has to actually be part of this program. But that being said, there's nothing planned right now for wholesale, but we can definitely revisit that question and, as we go down the road. And you'll have my email and all our information, contact information. So if that's something that you want to talk about offline, we can certainly do that.
Maybe during one of the breaks we could chat about
that too.
That'd be
Yep.
great.
A moment ago, you said that when it comes to the state playoff, if you will, that the equipment will be provided.
Mhm.
You also spoke a moment ago about the different levels,
Mhm.
that if you have X number of equipment, you're probably at X level versus another level.
Mhm.
So is there going to be multiple levels at this state tournament? And if so, can we get the specs of what that looks like for that equipment? Because that could also help guide us based upon our own financials within our own schools of what we can and cannot do.
So what we are going to be doing is once we announce these partnerships and we're all set there for these hardware providers, one of the things they've talked about they want to do is kind of a low tier, a mid tier, and a high tier. Instead of having people have to go take the time and do the research and figure out, what video card do I need and what motherboard do I need and what hard drive space do I need, we're going to be providing packages just to make that thing easier. And the goal is that anyone could feasibly compete with any of those. We're not going to be providing an option that no one can compete with, but then if you want the bells and whistles, you can then, move up the chain there.
So two questions with that then. As part of those different packages, do you expect that'll include things like peripherals and monitors as well?
Yes. Yep.
The second thing is do schools still have the ability to go and say, we have a very expensive IT department, we're going to let them just build it?
100%.
Okay.
So for the state tournament, if I play with a certain mouse and a certain keyboard and all this extra stuff, can I bring that stuff to the state tournament and
Yes.
use that stuff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and the thought is for the state tournament, again, we're going to be surrounding it with a LAN gaming event. We would still want the kids that are participating in the tournament to bring their own gear so that they can set up and play with their friends while they're not in the middle of a game or whatever it is. But yeah, that's a very common thing in gaming. It's kind of like having your own mitt that you really like. If you're an outfielder, you don't want someone giving you a catcher's mitt or something like that. It just wouldn't make sense. So the idea is that they bring their own peripherals, and then the actual computer machines are then provided for the competition.
Go ahead. Okay, thank you. When are the IT folks going to be brought in on the conversation? Because I know a lot of districts, my school, we block kids from hitting those games during school time.
Yep.
So what's the nature of that conversation? What do we have to do on that end to get things opened up? Because I can hear teachers screaming, you know what, well, he was practicing his gaming in my class.
Right.
So if you give access and all that kind of stuff, when Pandora's box get open,
That's right.
It's going to open. So what types of things do they need to know? And what can we talk to them about? What do we have to start looking at for them as well?
So we've got a tech survey that I actually don't believe we've sent out in Arizona. We have sent it out in New Mexico. That asks all of the really, really specific questions about if you're doing port forwarding and all of the really specific stuff. We're going to send that out and get an idea of what that looks like. We've actually got a slide, a few from here from an IT perspective, what needs to be done. A lot of that is, again, the hardware issue. It's opening up ports to the game servers and the game client, et cetera. It's everything related there. Yeah.
We've already checked into that in our district. You actually have to take down your firewall in order for them to play, which means you have to have a
down that firewall, those kids in that computer room could be anywhere on the internet.
Well, and not to get too far into the tech details, but you could take down the firewall, or you could open up all of the specific ports for that particular game, and that should be able to function the same way.
You can also set time of day rules and stuff like that.
All the above,
so
yeah.
that it's only open after a certain
Yep.
time of day, after school hours for 1 hour
Yep.
or whatever. You can lock it down and just recognize the one computer that you have designated for that one port, so if a kid plugs a different computer in that port, it won't work. You can customize it to no end, really.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, at least, in our district, like what our kids have for computers that they can use like in the classrooms, Chromebooks. One, League's not really gonna run on Chromebooks. But also, you have to, it's not just a browser game, you're downloading the application and you're downloading that, there's updates. And then a game, it can take a pretty short time, but an average game lasts about 30 minutes or so. This isn't probably something the kid will be doing right in the middle of class, because you have to give it your full attention. It's not like a game you play on your phone where you can just kind of, do your whatever and then play on it. Very attentive. So I don't see, and I'm a teacher as well, and I don't see that as like a worry, something I'm worried about. Because it's a lot of, effort, and they have to have a keyboard and a mouse. And so, if I say, all right, guys, you guys need to be writing your paper, and I see a kid move his mouse a lot, and he's hit the same 4 keys, I'm going, that's not what writing a paper is. I can
Right.
figure that out. And so I don't think it's going to be a huge issue in class. And then when it comes to firewall, like they were saying earlier, you can play at home. When we were starting as a club last year, we can only play at home. We didn't have computers yet that we could even play on. So we had our Discord channel that we made, and we just, named it Prescott High School League Team. And we invited all of our kids to it. We added them all as friends. We went through all of that. We gave them some guidelines, and then we just played at home. And that's even how we still play. They're like, oh, hey, I want to try a new build out. Can you hop on? And so it might be 11 at night, but it's a weekend, I have nothing to do. I'll hop on with them. We'll try out this new build. We'll talk about it. Like, oh, this part was good. This part was bad. You could have done this better in lane. And then they're like, oh, awesome, thank you. And then we get off. We don't even have to see each other. It's all online.
Yeah, no, exactly. Question.
When it comes to the competitions themselves, what about technical difficulties on the side, of not anything that have to do with any of the competition itself, but the game provider? Let's be honest, League of Legends is known very well for putting out bad updates or having service issues on certain times of the day. We could very well gather for a state tournament where the entire state congregates together, and League of Legends decided to do something that screwed up their entire game for the day, and now everyone's day is wasted. Well, people from Tucson drove and got a hotel, and their day's gone. The competition didn't happen because League wasn't there.
Yeah, so for all these game providers, especially the ones that provide like the game as a service that has updates every couple weeks, they have a well-known schedule of what maintenance time looks like. Typically in North America, you'll see between 1 o'clock in the morning and 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's all on the calendar.
I was referring more to the glitches on their end, because I play League a lot too. They have a lot of outages that were not planned.
Yeah, so for actual tournament rules and what happens what happens when the game goes down, or what happens if there's a bug in the middle of the game that changed the course of the game, we're going to be following for each game provider. They've got a set of tournament rules of how that looks. What do we do when that happens? What if an irreversible bug happens in the middle of a game, and now Team A believes that they were going to win, but now that this happened, it messed up the course of the game. There's different rules for each game and how we handle that, and we're going to be following those rules. Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a way to add like our high school initials or letters? So like when you watch League and you see all the teams, like they all start with their letters for their name and followed by the gamer's name. Is that something that we're going to be doing?
So that's actually handled differently on a game-by-game basis. So I can talk about, like in League, for example, you have a club. And so you join clubs as part of the game client, and then it shows your club tag right next to your name whenever you play. In a game like Counter-Strike, you can go through and you have groups on Steam, and Steam is kind of the provider that you buy the games and you interact with friends. So you can have groups, and then you can choose which group to put out in front of your name. So to answer that question, you don't actually have to go change the player name for each person. That's generally something that's provided on a game-by-game basis.
Have those initials. I only play League. I don't know these other games. Do they have to not be part of that club so that they can join the high school?
No, so you can be part of multiple clubs, but you would join the high school one, and then you can select which one is shown at any given time.
So we give all our students usernames, their own individual accounts.
Yep.
Why is it you don't recommend them using their accounts?
Can you repeat the question?
So we give each student their own individual user accounts to log on to computers. So why is it you don't recommend they use their high school account?
So we want them to use their own